together for Zhang and Bara Satanathan, who will be taking over this session. Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Thank you all. Thank you. Look, my name is Bharat Satanathan. I'm a partner with McKinsey in Singapore office. I lead a lot of our work in the payments practice, but today is not about me. Today is about Jack. And particularly, we're going to, over the next 30 minutes, explore a few different aspects of Jack's entrepreneurial journey, his thoughts around some macros on what's happening in the world. He just told me he came here from Shanghai. He's going to Indonesia today or later tomorrow. And then he's off to Dubai after that. He lives in New York. So, who better to give us a perspective of what's happening globally? And then we'll bring it back a little bit to fintechs and startups, and specifically in the space that Airwallex operates, which is a lot more around payments and financial infrastructure. Speak a little bit about opportunities in the region. But before I sort of launch off on asking him some questions, maybe for those of you who don't know Jack, just a bit of an introduction of Jack. Jack is, let me make sure I get my notes here. Jack is an entrepreneur, the CEO and the co-founder of Airwallex. Airwallex is a leading global payments and financial platform for modern businesses. The company was first established in Melbourne, in Australia in 2015, and under Jack's vision and leadership, it reached a unicorn status in just about under 3 years' time. Today, Airwallex has since grown to become a global company, operating in about 20-odd locations across Asia-Pacific, EMEA and North America, supporting over 100,000 businesses globally, including some of the major brands and companies that many of us would recognize, like Brex or Rippling or Qantas or Shein, for that matter. In 2021, Jack also launched Capital 49, which is a VC fund that is focused on investments into high-growth companies and tech-enabled companies. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Jack. Thank you. Maybe first question for you, and this is going to be about you and your entrepreneurship journey. And as I was preparing for this fireside chat, I tumbled upon this article of you, which said that you are the hardest working person in Airwallex, and you take over 260 flights a year. Gosh, I mean, you just told me you arrived here at 3 a.m. yesterday, and you're off to another place, and here you are within a few hours, attending this. What drives you? What are you building here? What's your motivation?
Well, first of all, thanks for the Malaysia government organize this fantastic event to promote innovation and digital economy. Airwallex vision from day one is helping the entrepreneurs, the business builders, the creators of the world to enable them and empower them to grow beyond borders. We build one of the most sophisticated payments and financial platform around the world across more than 120 countries. And our vision and goal is to enable those entrepreneurs to do what they do the best, to achieve that goals around the world without the barrier of the traditional financial infrastructure. And that's really what motivates us as a company, motivates me as a personnel to do what we do the best. Because we know when we succeeded, the entrepreneurs globally will benefit from the platform we built.
Thank you, Jack. Tell us a little bit about Jack himself. You've not necessarily had the straightest path to getting here. Obviously, the company is doing phenomenally well now, but you didn't start off as an entrepreneur in the beginning. And I also read in the articles that you've had different attempts at your own startup journey. So tell us a little bit about what made you do this, what made you be an entrepreneur, and what are some of the things that you faced and had to overcome in the early parts of your entrepreneurship journey to get you to building what you're building currently?
I was born in China, moved to Australia as a teenager. and work in sort of banking and finance industry for about 8 years initially. But before that, and I had a bit of a tough time in Australia as an immigrant, as a student that have to basically work many part-time jobs to earn my tuition fees and living expenses. And along the way, I also built many, I would say, businesses that profitable. Nothing super exciting, but ultimately took me to a financial position. I'm able to build something that less about the monetary value. In 2015, or actually in 2013, I started a coffee franchise business. The goal is to build like a blue bottle in Asia Pacific, originated from Melbourne. And while we're building that business, my co-founder is purchasing coffee beans from Indonesia, from Brazil, and we buying packages from China, and we need to make payments using Western Union or traditional banks. And they will charge us, 3 to 4% fees, and then often the payment get lost and then bounce back when we're making payment to the more exotic countries over the SWIFT or corresponding banking network. And when my co-founder brought that issue to me, and we thought, why can't we build a better alternative to the SWIFT system, which is invented in the 1970s, hadn't been changed in the last 50 years. So we went on a journey of basically disrupting the largest payment network in the world, building connectivity to local payment infrastructure in every single country around the world in the last 10 years. And now we build a network of over 120 countries, moving close to $200 billion this year. And over 95% of the transaction is through our own proprietary network. And only sort of less than 5% is still going through SWIFT, and ultimately want to optimizing away from all of them. And over 80% of those transactions is in near real time, and 50% is real time. So as we continue to optimizing our payment network, we hope to enable businesses and entrepreneurs around the world to have a better and more transparent and convenient way of operating their business globally and benefiting from the infrastructure we built from the ground up.
Fantastic. From China to coffee to payments to banking to global. It's phenomenal journey. Let's switch gears maybe a little bit around themes and macros. I think this notion of reglobalization, or some call it retribution, some call it deglobalization. There are many different views on this. Of course, as McKinsey, we have our own view on what's really happening, and we do see a particular trend. But as a successful CEO, a co-founder of a global company now, operating in these 20 different countries, working with clients who have needs that are global, what are you seeing? Is it has the trade corridors and trade patterns shifted quite radically? Are we now entering a new era? What are some of the big themes that you're picking up?
I think kind of going backwards to 2015 when we started Airwallex, there's a few catalysts that quite fortunately happened driving Airwallex moving forward and had a hyper growth for the last decade. I think the number one catalyst, the globalization of e-commerce. I think as as sort of the e-commerce become mainstream in the last sort of 15 years, people obviously innovated in the domestic market first. As the nature of e-commerce is, quite digital enabled and tech savvy, and the logistic infrastructure is getting mature globally, that enable the globalization of e-commerce. All these large platforms like, Amazon, Shein, Shopify have enabled not only larger businesses, but also smaller businesses going global from day one. If you think about, when we call global businesses in the last sort of 30 years ago, you think about Coca-Cola, you think about Nestle, those large Fortune 500 companies. But if you think about today, any mom and dad shop selling on Amazon, selling on Shopify, you are global from day one. So what we believe in is modern businesses are naturally global native and global first. And we have seen that trend basically been and keep growing, expanding in the last decade. And more entrepreneurs are building their businesses as a global company from day one. I think the second catalyst we see is during COVID. the pandemic have fundamentally changed businesses and people living their life, and also how they operating their business around the world. What we have seen is that people are getting more familiar with digital platforms and having this trend of the workforce also getting extremely globalized and then remote. A lot of the company, when they tap into the talent 10 years ago, they really think about the domestic market. But post-COVID, people have a mindset of kind of tapping on the talent globally from day one. And then touching on a little bit about Malaysia, I think Malaysia had a really good position because the education, the workforce, for example, Airwallex are looking at to making Malaysia the global servicing hub to supporting all our business operation in North America and Europe as well as Asia Pacific. I think the geopolitical landscape in China and US also kind of giving Malaysia opportunity to really boosting the position to be a more digital forward nation, to enable more global businesses like Airwallex to come to Malaysia to set up the presence here, not only servicing local businesses, but also servicing global companies and global operations. I think the third catalyst, what we're seeing recently, we call it reglobalization. I've touched upon the trend I've seen on the geopolitical situation between China and US. And a lot of the large platforms proactively shifting the supply chain from China to other markets. We have seen massive, I guess, trade shift to South Asia, to Middle East, and to Mexico. A funny thing is that we also see entrepreneurs shifting. A lot of the entrepreneurs in China have seen the trend, and they basically hedging that risk much early on to move their businesses to countries like Malaysia and also South Asia and Mexico. So if you see the factory and the supply chain owners in Mexico, more than half of them are actually the Chinese people now. So these entrepreneurs are smart, intelligent, and resilient. So they're not like a plant; they're more like an animal. So when the economy shift, when the geopolitical issue happen, then they shift that business focus as well, and moving that business globally as the trade war getting more intensified.
It's very interesting you say that about Mexico, because Mexico has now become the largest trading partner for the US.
Half the supplier probably still Chinese.
There you go. And I think we did this is public. We did a report on how geopolitics is impacting global trade. And I just wrote it down for this particular discussion. Words like decoupling, de-risking, reshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring, a whole bunch of these words, they had increased in corporate disclosure by 20x over the last 5 or so years. So it clearly shows how much of this is being a posture as much as it's really about a clear signal when it comes to data. So thank you for sharing that. Fairly interesting, very interesting data point about the Mexico. Now, changing topics maybe a little bit more on the digital economy itself, and as you as a company, as well as the space that you operate in, is rapidly digitizing. The clients of yours are rapidly digitizing. Data availability, data infrastructure in many of the countries, particularly in Southeast Asia, a country like Malaysia, is at a very different level than it was 5 years back. And also now with this whole generative AI, the productivity and the efficiency of how things are getting done, the potential of it is also enormous. So talk to us a little bit about how your customer behaviors have changed when it comes to working with players like you. Are they more digital, less digital? Is emerging markets beyond sort of China or learning from China and other markets like that? Is emerging markets, have they caught on the wave a lot more significantly? Are they more close to China in your view?
I think if you kind of going back to the sort of 3 catalysts I was talking about, the globalization of e-commerce, because there's more and more tech-enabled businesses become global first. A lot of globalized workforce and a massive digital adoption post-COVID. I think they are sort of the trend, driving the hyper growth of Airwallex. And if you see kind of where the digital economy is moving, it's definitely more towards emerging markets. And economy like Malaysia had, I guess, a really good position in Southeast Asia and the region to take advantage of this emerging tech trend. If you're looking at Airwallex, we operating in over 70 markets, and we are regulated in over 60 countries around the world. And in some countries, we had to do merchant acquisition to get license. For example, in China, in Mexico, and we're also looking at Indonesia. Vietnam is a country we had to do acquisition to enter the market. The government is very, is less, I guess, tech forward than we anticipated, so that we had to enter the market through the more difficult way. Where you look at entire Southeast Asia, the only country that we're able to apply a license from the central bank are Singapore and Malaysia. And the reason we're able to do so is because the transparency of the Malaysia government, the Singapore government, and the central bank is super supportive of digital innovation and enabled sort of more and more tech-forward businesses to innovate in this local economy and also across the region. I think that just kind of indirectly answering your question, I think the government will play a critical role in this sort of digital economy era. How transparent and open and less capital control of the government is, the more opportunity the local startup will have. And then come back to Airwallex vision is that we really want to be the platform to enable those entrepreneurs to expand their business domestically and globally with a single platform to enable them to managing everything about payments and finance and beyond, and give them access to capital and accelerating that growth globally. And a lot of people asking me, okay, what is the most important thing Airwallex can do to achieve that? Is it building trust? Is it transparency? How does people trust Airwallex to give you the money? What people don't realize is entrepreneurs need to survive from day one. They need to get the revenue into the door. And whoever that able to give them access to the best market in the world will have, I guess, the edge to get the customer in the door. And then you can build the brand and build the trust by having transparency and having a tech-enabled product to give them the confidence and giving them the experience to help them to open their business. So the trust will kind of build along the way of working as a partner, a true partner to the entrepreneurs around the world. I think that's what Airwallex have done the best. And I hope that kind of gives a bit of a context to the question you're asking.
It's certainly, and I think there's a couple of threads there that's worth exploring a little bit more, particularly around the notion of startups and the governmental infrastructure as well as the capital infrastructure, going back to even the previous session, the previous presentation. How do you see where fintechs are when it comes to funding now? Are good ideas still getting funded? There is obviously a slowdown when it comes to global funding. Based on at least the recent data, there's about 40% decrease in funding. But generally, do you think fintechs and where the founders' environment are there new ideas getting funded? You think there is going to be more growth for new ideas, or is it fundamentally, again, shifting back to more an incumbent-led play? Where do you see this?
I think the macro economy definitely not the best for startups and founders in the last 2 years. And Airwallex is definitely in a more fortunate position because we raised 1.2 billion US, and the company now profitable. So we kind of didn't need to raise capital in a near term. But I think the market is coming back. There's a clear signal in the market. I feel from the beginning of this year. There's a lot more early stage companies getting founded, extremely, especially for people playing the generative AI space. And I think the market is going to gradually improving over the next 2 years. So good company will get founded. And then the market is just getting more normalized. What happened in 2021 is not the norm of venture capital. And I think, to be honest, almost the last 2 years, the best thing ever happened to the good tech companies, which means they continue to access capital They continue to operating with efficiency. They continue to getting market share. And we believe those companies are able to survive and then actually have a better opportunity for the next 5 to 10 years to come. And then sort of touching on a little bit on sort of generative AI, if you're looking at, like a year and a half ago when people talk about LLM and all the sort of different AI companies, people still try to get the head around what is happening. And I'm not an exception to this. So I'm also, as an engineer, I'm also learning what's happening in AI and large language models around the world. So the first time I heard large language model is that the launch with Eric Schmidt, who's the sort of ex-CEO of Google. He told us, there's a bunch of entrepreneurs at the launch, and he basically told us that some fundamental breakthrough have happened, and since then we see massive kind of AI adoption and also innovation in the kind of across the industry in this space. I also fortunate enough to spend a bunch of time with Sergey, the co-founder of Google, and Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and asked them the same question. I said, how big is AI? And this was a year ago, and both of them answered the questions. AI is bigger than the internet. I initially couldn't really understand because, large language model is just really a model able to kind of taking, input and then giving output. The ability is really sort of predicting the next word and then giving a lot of context and a scenario to the input we're giving to the language model. Why is it bigger than the internet? It took me a year to figure this out. And if you started thinking about the different evolution in human history, you have the Industrial Revolution, you have the internet. I fundamentally believe AI is the third evolution in human history. And if you look at the cycle between each of the revolutions, it's also getting shorter and shorter. So now it's really come down to AI, I think, which is probably the third revolution. And next one is going to be energy, which is probably the fourth revolution. And the time gap between these different evolutions is probably getting shorter and shorter. I think fusion might become a reality in the next decade or 20 years. If you're looking at what kind of restricting the power of AI, it's really compute and power or energy. If we're able to solve the energy issue, and if we're able to solve the power issue, the efficiency issue, there's really no limit to where the AI can take the humanity in the next decade. If you're looking at the people benefited from the different generations of human evolution in the history, people that are willing to learn, willing to experiment, are the biggest benefit of this evolution and innovation. From an Airwallex point of view, we taking AI as the most important strategy for the company in the next decade. We fundamentally believe anything involve complicated workflow and data will fundamentally change because of generative AI. And I don't think the kind of foundational model able to solve those issues with complicated workflow. So companies able to combine Gen AI and building modern workflows and simplify workflow to enable companies consume data, interpret data, and automating data will be the next wave of innovation. And I'm really kind of excited about this trend to come.
Wonderful. I mean, AI is the next big evolution. Is clearly it's evident. It's here. It's probably valued at about 4 trillion. It's bigger than the size of Great Britain as an economy. So hopefully there's more to come in this space, and as more things get.
And touching on that, Malaysia, right? Malaysia had a great position in the semiconductor industry. If you're looking at the next sort of competition, it's really just like more energy, more compute, more efficiency, more power of the AI, and then you can compute more data. And it's kind of you need more power, you need more compute. So I think Malaysia as a country is really best positioned to take advantage of this AI wave. And also the geographical position, because Singapore is rather small, it's very hard to have massive data center, have massive power, and where Malaysia will kind of have the opportunity to really taking a leading position to have more power, generally more compute, to enable next generation AI companies around the world to set up presence here, and also helping local companies to leveraging this, I guess, foundational revolution to boosting the digital economy.
Thank you, Jack. I think we probably have time for 2 more questions at best. So maybe let me pick on the first one, given you spoke a little bit about Malaysia. Tell us Airwallex plans for Malaysia to the extent that you can disclose. And I know you touched on it a little bit as you sort of spoke about it earlier. But what excites you about Malaysia, and what are your plans broadly?
What we can do in Malaysia is largely depends on Bank Negara. So we're still waiting for our e-money license and money service category 1 license to be approved. We already got some approval for like online payment gateway and remittance, and we launched our MAP product in Malaysia, but we're at the final stage of getting our approval from the central bank so we can launch our product fully in Malaysia markets in the next, hopefully, 3 to 6 months. As soon as we launch the product, we're able to build a large presence locally to hopefully help the entrepreneurs in Malaysia and also bring some of the best tech companies globally to Malaysia. So kind of attending this conference and meeting all the ministers in the last 2 days, making me very excited about the policy and how transparent the policymakers are. So we decided to, as I said, make Malaysia a hub, a service hub for our global operation. I think that's our commitment to the Malaysia government and Malaysia economy. And then hopefully we're able to build a much larger presence in these countries. We have about 30 people here. Hopefully we will have hundreds of people in the next sort of 1 to 2 years. And really look forward to see that happen.
We're all looking forward to seeing that happen as well, I think. And maybe finally, there are lots of entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, founders, etc. in the crowd here. Maybe what would be your words of advice in today's environment? We spoke a lot about geopolitics. We spoke about reglobalization. We spoke about generative AI. We spoke about openness on the digital economy and your clients, so on and so forth. So as somebody who's starting on a journey today, what would be 2 or 3 big things as an entrepreneur, particularly in the fintech space, that you think would be worth for them remembering?
I think there's obviously so many people, so many great entrepreneurs with the intelligence and the horsepower to build great companies. But the most important thing of building anything is timing. If without those catalysts of globalization, of e-commerce and trade, and with the workforce and the digital adoption accelerated by COVID, Airwallex wouldn't be existing at the scale we are today. And as I said, we are at the beginning of the 3rd evolution in human history, which is AI. I think is no better time than now to building AI applications to take advantage of this, evolution. And hopefully we will see, my prediction is that going to be hundreds of billion-dollar companies get generated in this wave of AI generation, generative AI innovation. And if we have, if we can solve the energy issue, so there's going to be infinite amount of compute, what can limit the humans going to the universe? I think that would be the exciting to see hopefully in my lifetime.
Great stuff, Jack. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time here, and wonderful to hear your thoughts on a range of topics. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Zhang. Thank you, Bharat, as well, for the great job moderating this session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are down to our final panel discussion before we adjourn for lunch. So stay where you are, because coming up next, we are going to explore the driving forces behind the latest fintech innovations and the multitude of strategies needed to navigate this dynamic landscape. So do stick around, or we're just going to set the stage ready and allow a little bit more time for more guests to arrive, because currently we are running 2 concurrent sessions downstairs at the plenary hall at level 1 and this session over here. So do take note on the agenda and the various presentations that we have running concurrently, and make sure you are at the right place for the right presentation, okay? So give us a couple of minutes while we rearrange the stage, and we'll wait for more guests to arrive. Fill up the front row seats if you like a better vantage point to capture all the action that's happening over here. So this is our final panel discussion before we